and welcome back to the Stadium Showdown. Episode 42 this week features an interview with former Cleveland Mayor Dennis Kucinich. Now, before we actually get to that interview, I want to explain exactly why he's on the show. He was on the show previously last November where we discussed the lawsuit that he filed relating to the Modell Law and basically the fact that he says the city of Cleveland and the Cleveland Browns are ignoring that portion and not necessarily fighting hard enough to abide by state law. An injunction he recently filed this week kind of expands on that a little bit. Now, he is accusing the Cleveland Browns and the city of Cleveland of violating a very specific part of the lease. That is Section 9B2. This basically controls relocation. In the lease, it says that the Browns cannot be involved in any form of relocation until the lease ends. That would be in 2029. Remember, this is a lease the team signed. So they had agreed to this. When the Haslams purchased the team, they agreed to it then as well. So, Dennis Kucinich believes that he has a very strong case with them not abiding by the lease. It's going to be a two-part conversation. Here's part one. We welcome back to the Stadium Showdown former Cleveland Mayor Dennis Kucinich. Dennis, thank you as always for joining us.
Good to be with you, Jeff.
We always appreciate your time. We seem to have you on when it's involving some sort of action in the courts. Explain for the people this 383-page action. I got through quite a bit of it. I'd like to think that I'm able to somewhat understand, but for the people that haven't been able to read it.
Well, it's very simple. I mean, we're seeking to stop the team from moving. Now, what's the vehicle to do that? We filed for a preliminary injunction asking the court to stop it based on this, that the city should have, back in October of 2024, when we found out that the Browns were, getting ready to move, the city should have filed court action right then. They should have filed for the injunction. I mean, I'm doing this as a taxpayer, but that was the city's job. And the question that they haven't answered is, why didn't they? And the key point is this. Way back in '96, we had lost the team, and we, through real struggle and support from the public, we got the team back, and a new stadium was built. There was a lease signed, and that lease had, as one of the covenants, because of the experience we had with the Browns moving to Baltimore, that lease had this stipulation that the owners of the Browns could not even talk about moving during the course of the lease, which runs to 2029. But guess what? They not only talked about moving, they planned to move. They've set in motion a move. So the city, at the very beginning in October, should have done something, should have done what I'm doing now. Now, I filed a taxpayer's demand back in October of 2024. Remember, I'm the one that was the author of the Modell Law that says that, if you're going to move, you got to give the people an ability to buy the team, give the city the ability to buy the team. I didn't do that either. But this issue in court is about the lease. And we feel very confident that if we are able to, present our case, that we'll have a real opportunity to stop this in its tracks.
Before we get to the portion about, potentially getting there, the specific section is Section 9B2,
right,
which is related to relocation potentially here. The nature of them just seeking a potential new place, that, on your understanding, breaks the lease, right?
The lease said they can't even talk about it. I mean, you could think about anything. That's private. But when they start talking about it and doing something towards moving, nope, that's a violation of the lease. And the city should have gone ahead with a request for an injunction to stop them, because the whole predicate of that deal that brought the Browns back was, we're not going to go through this again. We've been through it once. Anybody remembers that was a nightmare. We don't have to do that again. We have the lease. We have the protection. Well, they broke the lease. Any of your viewers who ever signed a lease knows that if you break it, you can end up in court. Browns, the city looked the other way. And so why do I have to do this? Why didn't they do it? Why didn't they stand up for the taxpayers? And there's a lot at stake here, Jeff.
The city's law department in this filing. You called out for basically being lazy, is the way that I read it, or at least in the filings, that they put half effort in, didn't put in a full effort on a lot of this.
Well, let's put it another way. They fumbled the ball. They had the obligation to protect the taxpayers' investment of $573 million, which the taxpayers paid to build that stadium. Now they want to tear it down. It would be $1 billion to replace that stadium as it is. That stadium is good for another 25 years. They want to tear it down. So the owners of the Browns will have, all the business from downtown moved out of town. Look, I'm here on behalf of the taxpayers. That's all. Yes, I'm a former mayor. Yes, I served on the city council. I understand these issues. And I'm not new on this. You have to remember, October of 2024, I sent the first of 3 taxpayer demands to the law department. And they never moved to protect the people. As a matter of fact, City Council, Ordinance 391-24, told the law director, look, you have to keep the Browns in Cleveland. That was an ordinance. He was supposed to do that. He never followed it. So what it appears is, whether it's lazy, fumbling the ball, whatever you want to call it, they didn't do their job. If they did their job, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now about it.
You have a unique position here. You're the former mayor of Cleveland. You've held essentially every political office that one can hold within the sphere of Northeast Ohio politics. We have a situation where you have the $100 million settlement that came from the city and from the Browns, and now you have a situation where you are at least showing that they did not necessarily fight as hard as they potentially could. Putting 2 and 2 together here, do you think they just saw the $100 million and said, this is fine enough for us? We can let go of some of the potential issues of the lease. I mean, why would they ignore some of the problems that you are saying that are blatant?
Jeff, it's not even $100 million. $30 million of that, or $35 million of it, would go to tear down a stadium that's worth, it would cost $1 billion to rebuild. I mean, that's silly. No, I hope that it's not that they just took a dive. Okay, sports people understand what that means. They had an obligation to enforce that lease. That would have stopped everything, and then the city would have had leverage. It gave away all the leverage. And then when it said, well, we did everything we could, that's what they told the city council. They told city council we did everything we could. Hey, they kept city council in the dark. The council president didn't even know what was going on until, a week before or a couple weeks before the deal was presented to council. And they were working on this for maybe 3 years, Jeff. And so they kept the public in dark. They kept the council in dark. They didn't stand up for the taxpayers. They let a perfectly good stadium and a team that is the Cleveland Browns, they just let them go away and say, oh, that's too bad. No, I was mayor. You fight for the city. You fight for the taxpayers. You say, this is who we are. We're not going to give up a team just out of nothing. We'll fight you all the way down to the Ohio Supreme Court if we have to, and beyond that if we can. I don't understand this idea of playing patty cake in court and then saying, oh, we did everything we could. Baloney. I mean, look, I'm a Clevelander. They didn't do right by the taxpayers. And so we're in court now, hoping that we can get this preliminary injunction, which would put the taxpayers back in the game, and then we'll see what happens from there. There's all kinds of possibilities.
You and I spoke in November. That was when the initial lawsuit was presented. I listened back to some of it, and you kind of allude to this new injunction that you filed in that interview. You talked about the lease, the breaking of the lease, the lack of the effort, all these things. Did there become a point for you where you felt that it was you had to file this injunction because you had all this information, you understood all these things, and potentially the lawsuit that you filed, did you feel like it was enough? Did you feel like you had to include more to it? I mean, why this injunction and why this injunction now?
After looking at the entire issue, starting with the Browns, I just feel that every effort has to be made on behalf of the people. And that every effort comes as a result of having a specialist in taxpayer law and that's Logan Trombley. He's of the firm of Warner Mendenhall, who's a very noted attorney on taxpayer issues. And with Logan's help, we were able to create this opportunity and the words to file this request for the preliminary injunction. You know, I needed help on this. I couldn't do this on my own. And, you know, in August of last year, I filed a 650-page suit. And, you know, I know this thing chapter and verse. But, you know, at this point, we're taking on not just the city of Cleveland, but the Browns as well, because they're in court together. They're working together. So, you know, those are okay odds because I'm a Clevelander. But at the same time, without Logan Trombley, you know, I don't know how much further we'd be able to go.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back more with Dennis Kucinich. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Stadium Showdown. Episode 42 this week features an interview with former Cleveland Mayor All right, and we are back with our interview with Dennis Kucinich. Dennis, as always, again, thank you for joining us here. I want to talk a little bit to the reaction that we've at least gotten, both from our previous interview and then from the article related to this. One of the terms that I saw in the comments was a quote-unquote fool's errand. Many people feel that the stadium's too far gone. The Browns are too far gone. First, your reaction to that. And second, what do you say back to people that do believe that regardless of what you're doing, the Browns are going to move?
Well, I would remind people that the city of Cleveland sold the municipal electric system, you know, in the late 70s. It was already sold. I intervened, blocked the sale, and that system still exists. Now it's Cleveland Public Power. Then it was Muni Light. I've been in battles like this before. The steel mill, we were told it was shut. There was nothing could be done. We saved the steel mill. You know, it all depends how you look at the world. You know, if you look at the world where some, you know, wealthy interest says there's nothing you can do, then you're cooked. I don't look at the world that way. When these mighty and powerful interests come forward and then they say to the people, you're going to do what we say. No. It's time to fight back. And so I'm doing it with, you know, in the way that is accepted, and that is as a taxpayer on behalf of the taxpayers. And $573 million, the people invested. They invested early on. The Browns at that point were worth $1 billion. Now they're worth, according to Forbes magazine, I think about 7 or 7.5.
7.2, I believe.
Okay,
is it?
So
Yeah,
let's say 7. Let's say 7 to 7.5 billion dollars. The city has an investment there. I see that as an investment. We should get something out of that, but we never have. Instead, what we got was a slap in the face, and be happy with this fake $100 million deal. No. I know exactly what's going on here, Jeff, and that's why I'm hanging in there. And the people of Cleveland are entitled to representation on this.
I'm just going to ask you an honest question. do you think you have a shot in this?
Yes,
Do you think that you
absolutely.
have a case?
Absolutely. And I think that it's quite possible that, and hopefully it'll be it's up to the court, of course. But if the court agrees with us that the city did not amend the lease as they needed to in order to go forward to conclude this deal, it'll have to go back to city council. A city council, which is new, but previous, members who are continuing there were told, hey, this is all done. It's a done deal, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, there was back then. And city council instructed law department to act on behalf of the people. The law department didn't do that. I'm doing it, and hopefully, if we win in court, it'll go back to the council, and the people of Cleveland once again will have a chance to be represented, because this administration did not represent the people of Cleveland in its dealings with the Browns owners.
I don't like speaking in the ifs, but we're going to play that game for a second here. What happens if a judge declines these things? What if they turn down your previous lawsuit and this injunction? What other avenues potentially do you feel like you could look into?
That's up to the court. I mean, the court has to make the decision according to what the court believes is the law. We think we have a pretty good chance. I've been in this since I filed the suit in August of 2025. And that lawsuit is still alive. And this preliminary injunction, with the help of our attorney, Logan Trombley, I think we have a chance. And that's all we ever asked for, just a chance. If we win, we win. And if we lose, we see if there's something else.
That's what I was going to ask. I mean, do you have, because again, since we spoke, now we have this new injunction. So are you still looking at potential avenues and other things, other plot holes, I guess you could say, in their plan that you could add to your case?
Look, people, it was a Yogi Berra who said, it ain't over till it's over. This is not over.
The last question I have for you, one that you and I talked about last time, but I still think it's important to discuss. Moving the Browns changes a lot. Changes the economic center of Cleveland, changes the economic center of Northeast Ohio, establishes a new area, essentially, that you could see concerts, events, things like that. You've been around for a long time seeing businesses change. In your opinion, what is the profound impact if the Browns eventually move? What do you see the future of downtown Cleveland,
there was one study done that suggested that the immediate impact would be a loss of at least $30 million to the businesses in downtown. Downtown Cleveland's, is in trouble right now. When you look at all the buildings that are either in default in their loans or in foreclosure even, or being handled by trustees, we have a crisis here in terms of the value of our real estate, in terms of the viability of our downtown area. The Browns are a linchpin of that, okay? And once you lose a major league team like the Cleveland Browns, and the fact that they could even be called the Cleveland Browns, I mean, if I was in Brook Park, I'd say I'd want them to be the Brook Park Browns. But when that team moves out of the city, that's damaging economically to the city and also to the fans who for years and years and years have dedicated their passion and their money to the city. And so, yeah, it hurts downtown. And when it hurts downtown, it has a ripple effect. This is bad for the city, Jeff. That's another reason why, I feel obligated to fight on this, because, I love this city. I've been given an opportunity to serve it in many ways. But when I looked at this, I just said, there's something wrong with it. And I understand if people feel it's all over, but I'm saying it's not.
Dennis, you answered all my questions here. Is there anything we didn't touch on that we should have?
No, but thank you so much for
Awesome.
this.
We want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
And once again, we want to thank Dennis Kucinich for joining us on this week's episode of the Stadium Showdown. And coming up after a very quick break, we hear from Governor Mike DeWine. Now, you know that there is currently $600 million kind of in limbo at the moment legally. Well, what happens if a judge decides that the Browns can't get $600 million from the Department of Unclaimed Funds? The governor has an idea. That after the break. welcome back. As the $600 million from the Department of Unclaimed Funds remains held up in courts, as the courts in Columbus still debate the lawsuit from Mark Dan and the Dan law firm over whether or not it's constitutional to even do this in the first place, Governor Mike DeWine has a slight proposal here. Now, you may remember the governor wanted the funding for the Brown Stadium to come from taxing the companies that do sports gambling. He wanted to double it and use that money to go toward a stadium. The Senate, the House, they decided differently. They wanted to do this Department of Unclaimed Funds, taking $1.7 billion out of the Department of Unclaimed Funds to be used by whichever organization could actually get it. The Browns getting $600 million of it. But as the lawsuit drags on, you really got to start debating what potentially could be next if a judge decides that the Browns can't get access to that funding. So here's what the governor had to say.
It's not just the Browns. I know when we're in Cleveland, we talk a lot about the Browns, understandably, but this, one of the things I insisted on is that this money be actually available for other stadiums in other parts of the state, whether it's baseball, basketball, whatever the sport, football, whatever the sport is. My original proposal called for actually taxing these out-of-state companies that are coming in here that are doing sports gaming. We could generate all the money we need to do that by simply taxing them at no cost to any Ohioan. So if we get a final court decision, and I don't expect this, but if we had a final court decision that said you could not use the current funds, I would go back to the state legislature and suggest that they do actually impose a tax on these companies. But I don't think we're going to get there. I think we eventually will get a decision from a court that says that this money can in fact be used. And so we will then be able to move forward not just with the money going to the Brown Stadium, but we'll be able to do work on Bengal Stadium in Cincinnati and the other sports that we have throughout the state of Ohio. And we're blessed with some great sports teams and some it's one of the great things that we have in Ohio, along with the arts, culture, and sports.
All right, and that is it for the latest episode of the Stadium Showdown. Thank you so much for watching. Of course, if you want to watch any of our previous coverage, go ahead, scan the QR code on your screen right now. We are still trying to find out exactly when the official groundbreaking is going to be on the site. Obviously, legally, there's some things that are playing in issues there. Every time we've tried to reach out to Brook Park on it, they don't seem very concerned, so we'll have to yet to see what actual legitimate concerns they will have related to the lawsuits, and then, of course, related to any construction as well. Thank you so much for watching. We will see everybody coming up next week for episode 43. For now, I'm Jeff Slauson with 19 News. See everybody in the week.